Well, hi, my name's Andy Tidy and welcome back to another Canal Hunter video. In this video I'm going to step slightly outside my usual canal history content, and if that's what you've come here for, feel free to skip this video and wait for the next one. It won't be long coming. Anyhow, I'm going to move into current affairs, and it is relevant to the channel, so if you're interested, bear with me. In a nutshell, we've changed boats. And this is going to mean reworking the introduction to these videos, as well as changing over my blog where all those photos are stored.
About 11.
This video offers a bit of an explanation and at the same time introduces you to Briar Rose, our new boat. We bought Wandering Buck way back in 2006, nearly 20 years ago, when she was still called Piccolo. Yes, you can change canal boat names. At the time, she was just 4 years old with a mere 600 hours on the engine. We bought her with a view to upgrading to a larger or possibly better boat sometime in the reasonably short term, but things didn't work out quite as planned. Well, for 8 years we used her for pleasure, and then the Jam business started. Initially we based it out on an exposed rear deck, which kind of proved the concept, but it also highlighted the limitations in terms of space. Roll on a couple of years and the Jam business had grown, and we were faced with a decision: replace the boat with something longer, stretch Wandering Buck, or the third and rather more wacky idea, buy a butty and use the extra space at the back that we needed. Stretching was ruled out pretty quickly because, as Wandering Buck was a budget boat, it really wasn't worth stretching. Better to buy a longer one. And so the idea rested for a year or so, till one day we were passing Keith Bull's yard on the Shropshire Union Canal, and we saw the back cabin of a lovely little butty sitting on the hard. Interesting, I thought. Something like that would do rather nicely, but what a shame that someone else has got it and they're already working on it. Roll forward another 6 months and we pass again, and this time the back cabin has been hoisted up onto a shipping container. It looks like it's not being worked on after all. So I phoned up Keith and I observed that he got a really nice back end, with a very typically ribald response in return. Anyhow, it turned out that the hull had been built in the early 1980s as a 30-foot butty called Reliance to an icebreaking tug. Probably something a bit like the icebreaker Storm if you're familiar with the boat. Keith had added the top cabin in the late 1980s, and then he stretched it out to 50 feet to be used as a houseboat. Eventually, the houseboat owner wanted the craft to become mobile, so the original back cabin was chopped off and an engine counter was added. So I guess you could say that the butty had a baby which then sailed away. and I guess it's still out there somewhere. Well, I hope you're keeping up with all this. There'll be a test at the end. So, then the redundant back cabin sat around in Keith's yard for the better part of a decade. As he said, it was unwanted but far too nice to chop up. In the end, it was pressed into service as the yard shed, and during that time it required, shall we say, a patina of age. And so we came along with this rather crazy idea to bring it back to life, this time as a 27-foot butty, because it had to fit into the lock with wandering bark. Wandering bark, for the record, was 42.5 feet long. After some discussion, Keith volunteered that he'd got the back end of 12 feet of an old 1890s iron dayboat. It was in the weeds at the back of the yard, but it might just work for the bows and the hold. But he said, I'm only going to build this if it looks right. Well, we returned back to the yard 2 weeks later, and it turns out Keith had become a man obsessed. He had stopped work on all his contracted work and devoted himself totally to creating this unique and very beautiful little boat out of what was essentially 2 chunks of scrap, which had been kicking around in his yard for decades. Well, the combined hulls worked better than either of us expected, and so a price and a timeline was agreed, and we left Keith and his happy band to weave their magic. Over a period of about 8 months, they shaped the 2 old hulls and they brought it right up to the red oxide primer stage of completion, at which stage we took delivery and we took it back to our moorings at Calf Heath. It was there that we did the paint job and we prepared it for its new life as a floating preserve shop. What followed completely exceeded our expectations. Not only would the hold carry 2,000 jars of preserves, it also became an instantly recognisable feature at the local canal festivals. Kind of self-advertising, and to be honest, it was a huge amount of fun. But, and there's always a but, there was a downside. Actually, there were a few. Firstly, it meant that we were 100% committed to wandering bark, and that upgrade of boat that we'd been planning was impossible because the combined length of the 2 boats was exactly 72 feet. Secondly, the Butty slowed us down. Not as much as you might expect on canals, and there's a reason why I call this channel Life at 2.3 miles an hour. But more significantly, when we were tied abreast on rivers, our maximum speed on flat water was 3 miles an hour. This is okay downstream, but potentially problematic going up. There was one notable occasion a couple of years ago when we were pushing the flow on the Severn, and our average speed was 1.5. This dropped to half a mile an hour on the shallow sections, so it was very close to not actually getting there. This certainly wasn't ideal, and it curtailed our ambitions for any estuary cruising. Thirdly, age started to creep up on us. What had been easy and fun in our mid-50s became not so much fun as I approached my mid-60s. And in recent years I've had problems with RSI in my shoulder and back twinges from the weight of carrying the butty. Clearly our bodies are telling us something. So about 2 years ago we came to the conclusion that if we wanted to keep the jam business going, we really had to do something, because something had to change. Plan A was to buy a 60-foot boat with a tug deck, able to store the stock under the deck and then set up our gazebo on top of it. A bit like we have been doing in the last decade, but obviously all inside one boat. That kind of gets rid of the steering issue, but on festival days the setup would remain as hard as ever. So we moved on to the idea of selling from a side hatch, an approach which has been used very successfully by many roving traders, including the cheese boats, whose sales model is very similar to our own. And then, by chance, we were having a meal with our friends Adam and Adrian aboard Briar Rose. And I spied the side hatch and kind of sidled up to it to see how it would feel. To my surprise, I could see us selling from something like it, so I turned to Adrian and I said, yeah, but the real issue is finding a boat with enough storage. Quick as a flash, he pulled the cushions off the dinette seats and revealed this chasm underneath. Quick calculation suggested that this would hold about 2/3 of our full load, at which point he lofted up the bed base and revealed another space which was once occupied by a holding tank, almost as large again and on the centre line. Well, that certainly opens up the possibilities, I replied, and then he delivered the killer comment. Well, You must remember, we're going to be selling Briar Rose just as soon as our new one's been built by Braid Bar. Well, the deal was done. The sale was agreed there and then. It was just a matter of timing. Well, the plan was that we'd buy Briar Rose at the start of 2025 trading season, meaning that 2024 would be the very last year with the Butty. But as with all things canal, times slipped. First there was a delay in getting hold of the hybrid engine that they needed. And then the 2025 droughts prevented Braid Bar getting boats in and out of the paint shop. Delivery dates bounced all over the place. One month it was September 2025, the next minute it was January 2026, or possibly even later. In the end, the stars aligned on the 1st of December 2025, which meant we had 2 seasons to say goodbye to the Jam Butty, and then a couple of months to get Wandering Bark and the Butty sold, and then 3 or 4 months to prepare Briar Rose ready for the 2026 trading season. The Jam Butty, or Montgomery to give it its proper name, is an unusual craft with seemingly a potential narrow market. But as it turned out, we could have sold it 5 times over. But no sooner had we put the word out on the street among the roving traders than Paul and Natasha of Wakamandoto asked to buy it to support their growing canal art business. They also sell ecologically friendly cleaning products, which are very heavy and well suited to the hold of the Butty. They, like us though, had to exercise a bit of patience. So, with the Butty effectively sold from September, that left just Wandering Bark. The plan had been to end the season at Huddlesford and then to take the motor on to Sarah Edgson's brokerage at Glasgow. But the stoppages put paid to that. Instead, we marketed it on the move. And Tyler was the second person to view it and put in an offer almost straight away. So good news indeed. For the first time in 20 years, we were boatless. Well, for all of 2 months. Well, this weekend is special because we finally took ownership of Briar Rose. And so starts a whole new boating chapter. We're still going to be attending the usual canal festivals, so you can still stock up on your favourite preserves. But we're going to be using our new buttyless status to start visiting some parts of the inland waterways which have to date been beyond our reach. And our plan is to start with the northeast, aiming for York and Ripon, probably visiting the Chesterfield along the way. So as one door closes, another one opens, and we are really looking forward to cruising all of those new waters. To make a start, we just cruised down from Streetay to Ulrawas and back again, just to get a feel for the boat. So that's our news. I will get back to the canal history very soon, but for the time being, here's to Wildside aboard the Jam boat and our extended cruising next season and beyond. Cheerio and happy hunting.